Hello and welcome to New Frontiers on CCTV International. I'm Ji Xiaojun in Beijing, and today we're continuing our investigation into events at the dawn of Chinese history in and around a place known as Huangdi City. The Battle of Zhuolu, fought nearly 5,000 years ago, is one of the most famous battles in Chinese history, and one of the key players in it was a mysterious figure called Chiyou. Legend has it that Chiyou was killed in the battle by the army of Huangdi, the Yellow Emperor. But Chiyou's soldiers, out of loyalty to their fallen general, hid his body and buried it in the secret place. Well, archaeologists and historians down through the centuries have naturally been keen to find Chiyou's last resting place. Eventually, attention focused on a village called Tasi.
In August 1996, however, Ren Changhua returned to the village to undertake a more detailed study. And this time, he and his colleagues came announcing their real identities and their purpose. Learning what it was they wanted, the village leaders hastily called in tomb keeper Zhou Derui. He proceeded to fire a question at Ren Changhua that left the latter even more confused.
周德瑞呢就问我，说任书记啊，说这个蚩尤是好人还是坏人？我当时给他说，蚩尤当然是好人，蚩尤是我们中华民族的文明始祖之一。那么接着呢，这个周德瑞就又向我说，说任书记，如果我给你们说出蚩尤，你们能够保证他的安全吗？我当时肯定的给他回答说，绝对保证他的安全。在这样一个情况下呢，周德瑞才把我们带到了这个地方，也就是蚩尤坟的地方。
我说你经常来这儿吗？
经常来。
啊，
我就是关心开这个的。
啊，这是埋的谁呀？你知道吗？
知道。
谁呀？
蚩尤。
埋的蚩尤啊？
蚩尤。
啊，
这蚩尤坟、蚩尤墓。
你听谁说这是蚩尤坟啊？
反正在街上这个一辈儿子一辈儿的老祖爷了，就往下推下来。啊。说你好好保管。啊。好好开待这个坟。
你们祖祖辈辈都是看坟的？
哎，祖祖辈辈开坟，我们祖祖辈辈开庙开坟。
啊，看了多少代也不知道。
不是，我也没多少代了。
According to Zhou Derui, his father, grandfather, and great-grandfathers all worked as keepers of this tomb, and he had no idea how many generations had passed since his family had taken on this responsibility. But he had never forgotten the words passed down to him by the old generation of his family. He was told that originally a monk from the temple had taken care of the tomb, but that after the temple was destroyed, an old monk had stayed on to continue protecting the tomb after all the other monks had left. As Zhou Derui's ancestor was a follower of Buddhism, upon the death of the monk, his ancestor had been entrusted with the duty of caring for the tomb. The old monk warned him, however, to never let others know the identity of the tomb's occupant, adding that if asked, he should just say that it was the tomb of Bai Lung. From that time on, the truth about the identity of who lay within the tomb was told to each successor only upon the death of each previous tomb keeper. Zhou's family had kept this secret for nobody knew how many generations. The memorial stone, which bears no characters whatsoever, was shown to Ren Changhua and Zhao Yuda the first time they visited the site, but only after a considerable amount of persuasion was applied to Zhou Duerwei. And there is, of course, an interesting story about it.
到了文化大革命，破四旧，他们哥几个就怕把这块碑给毁掉，所以他们就埋在底下一个猪圈啊，一个猪圈埋在地底下了。这是他刚才讲改革开放以后啊，他们又把这块碑重新刨出来立在这个地方，所以周家呀是为这守这个蚩尤墓是立了大功的，你们是立了大功的啊，你的功德无量啊。
However, one question still remained in the minds of Zhao Yuda and Ren Changhua. If this really was Chu You's tomb, who had shipped his corpse from the place where he was killed 15 kilometers away at such a chaotic time? And as it happens, the local people have a story about this as well. After his area was flooded, Chu You and his soldiers beat a hasty retreat halfway up the mountain to Chu You village. Enemy troops were in hot pursuit, however, squeezing Chu You and his men from both south and north. After a fierce and bloody battle between the hunter and the hunted, Chu You was seriously wounded. His men carried him from the battlefield and headed for a gully to the south. A few kilometers away, they stopped in front of a ravine. Their horses, exhausted, refused to go any further and neighed pitifully before collapsing dead on the ground. By then, Chu You was already dead. From that time on, this place went by a new name, Lima Pass, meaning the horse stops and refuses to go further. As Huangdi, or the Yellow Emperor's soldiers, came closer and closer, one of Chu You's men changed into Chu You's clothes before committing suicide by knocking his head against the cliff. The remaining men carried Chu You's corpse into the ravine. In the end, Huangdi's troops found the body in Chu You's clothes and, believing it to be Chu You, they triumphantly carried the body back. Huangdi instructed that before burial, the body be dismembered.
But this still leaves one vital question unanswered. Just how could Chu You's body have ended up in Tasi village? Ren Changhua's curiosity was piqued. He decided to trace the direction Chu You's army had taken in their fight. The place to start, he decided, was Lima Pass.
八卦村啊，有一位老农叫雷进，他呢听祖上的人给他传言下来说啊，利马关就在涿鹿县的子方口一带。但是他当初也没到过这个利马关。根据他提供的这个线索，我们呢徒步走了10多里路，最后呢就在涿鹿县的子方口乡的柳树庄附近找到了利马关。
The pass lies at the entrance to a ravine close to Liu Shu village. With towering peaks looming large around it, the pass makes a natural barrier against any military attack.
这是利马关，那么利马关的北边是涿鹿大战的古战场。当时呢，这个地方已经是黄帝、燕帝的势力范围。那么蚩尤要逃难，只能向南前进，而面对的呢是东陵山。东陵山的海拔是2306公尺，山高，特别陡峭，无路可走。所以当时呢，蚩尤的部下只能抬着他的尸体向东边这条沟前进。那么这条沟的前面呢，就是塔寺村。
To Ren Changhua's surprise, this story, along with Zhou Durui's words, formed a complete chain of evidence about a past event, and there were no missing links. The old generations of Tasa village and Bagua village, separated by just a few dozen kilometers, have throughout history maintained close relations, and the stories they tell about Chu match perfectly. Can this be mere coincidence? Nobody can say for sure. Whether this tomb really is where Chu was buried is open to debate. However, one thing is certain. Just like Huangdi and Yandi, Chu is an ancestor of the Chinese nation, and stories about him have been recorded over and over in history books and are often on the lips of Chinese people even today. The battle in Zhuolu between Chu and Huangdi was a prelude to the merging of different peoples and the beginning of a unified Chinese nation. It is little wonder, then, that historians look upon this battle with the utmost respect as the beginning of Chinese civilization. One day in the spring of 1995, Gao Wentai, a farmer from Shishuidi village in Dongchang Township, Yangyuan County, Hebei Province, discovered a group of ancient tombs while reclaiming some wasteland. For archaeologists and historians, the discovery suddenly shed light on an ancient time when China was under the rule of Huangdi, but it also aroused doubts about the authenticity of records covering several thousand years of Chinese history. It was the spring of 1995, and Gao Wentai was reclaiming a piece of wasteland at a place called Jiangjialiang when he dug up a human skull. Although he felt somewhat disturbed by his find, he wanted to find out why it was there. As he continued digging, he unearthed a number of human bones. Who could have possibly buried a corpse in this place? Gao Wentai had grown up in this village, and he'd never heard of a graveyard around this spot. Was this the skeleton of a murder victim? Or had this place perhaps been a graveyard in ancient times? The next day, Gao reported his discovery to township government officials, and they in turn notified the Public Security Bureau. A little while later, 2 policemen followed Gao Wentai to the site where he'd found the bones. The policemen examined the spot carefully, and having excluded the possibility of murder, they speculated that the spot might have been a graveyard of some ancient people. They then reported the find to the Hebei Provincial Administration of Cultural Relics.
当时呢，我派李军带了几个技工到阳源、江家梁一带呢进行考古勘探。他们经过1个多月的勘察，发现那里的地下是熟土。所谓熟土层呢，就是指有人翻动过的土。我们考古主要就是靠判断土层的生熟，来确定呢地下是否有东西。根据勘察的情况，我们判断那下面呢应该是有东西的，但是究竟是什么，是灰坑还是墓葬，在没有发掘之前呢，我们还是非常难以准确的把握它。
Yangyuan County lies in the northwestern part of Hebei Province, adjoining Datong City in Shanxi Province to the west and Yuxian and Zhuolu counties to the southeast. The Sanggan River, which originates in Shanxi province, runs through the Nihewan Basin from west to east and then joins the Huangdi River.
The Nihewan Basin is recognized as a cradle of human civilization. During the past 80 years, archaeologists have discovered evidence of more than 100 human settlements there, dating from the Paleolithic age. The question was just how old was the Jiangjialiang site?
In June of 1995, archaeologists from the Hebei Institute of Cultural Relics and Archaeology and the Faculty of Archaeology and Museology of Peking University began an excavation at Jiangjialiang. At the site, they drew lines from a point in the southwestern corner stretching to the east and north in a right angle, and then mapped out 16 square exploration pits measuring 10 by 10 meters. In effect, this meant that almost the entire Jiangjialiang site was to be excavated. Over the following few days, the team removed a layer of topsoil about 30 centimeters thick, and it was then they came upon a group of tombs arranged neatly in 5 rows from south to north. Each row had a different number of tombs, but they were all close to each other. There was a true sense of mystery about what had been uncovered. Most of the tombs were of the vertical pit in bare earth type and contained the remains of just one individual. In each case, the deceased had been laid on his or her back with the limbs bent, with the exception, that is, of the skeletons found in tomb M47. Tomb M47 yielded 3 human skeletons piled one upon the other. The fact that the 3 skeletons were in perfect condition indicated that the tomb had never been intruded upon. It also indicated that this was not the site of a reburial, and that the 3 deceased had been interred at the same time and laid facing upward with their limbs bent according to some strict requirement. Li Juan was puzzled by this.
江家梁墓地遗址非常独特。 它有着极强的个性，像这么大规模的新石器时候墓葬群啊，在河北省还是首次发掘。所以我们在发掘墓葬和房屋遗址的时候啊，都格外小心，生怕疏漏掉了哪怕是隐藏在泥土里的一丁点细节。
One afternoon, the archaeologists had been working only a short while when technician Gao Wentai, working in tomb M75, found an object caked in soil about the size of a quail egg. It was found lying on the right side of the head of the tomb's occupant. After carefully removing the soil from the object, Gao Wentai still could not make out what it was. He asked Li Juan, the head of the archaeological team, to come over and take a look.
当时啊，我把上面的泥土搓掉以后啊，隐约看到一个很小的、很圆的一个造型。当我再把泥土搓掉干净以后啊，马上在我面前显示出一个玉猪龙。
This jade carving of the pig dragon, now retained in the Hebei Provincial Museum, is cream in colour, 3.3 centimetres high and 2.6 centimetres wide. Its ears are raised high, its mouth protrudes forward, there are wrinkles in its snout carved in a talio, and its body is curved to make its head face its tail. In the middle of the pig dragon is a carefully drilled hole, and behind its ear there is a smaller hole. Clearly, the craftsmanship of this jade carving is superb. But what does this pig dragon imply?
哎呀，这种东西对我们考古工作者来说是非常熟悉的，这是典型的红山文化的标志器物。
Hongshan culture was named after a site of a Neolithic age human settlement found at Hongshan by the Laoha River in Chufeng City, Inner Mongolia. It dates back 5,000 years to the later period of Yangshao culture. The Niuheliang site in the Liaohe River Valley is a representative site of Hongshan culture. At the Niuheliang site, archaeologists found the remains of a large sacrificial temple and the statue of a goddess, important evidence of the development of humankind from a clan society toward a more civilized society. The most representative object of Hongshan culture is this jade carving of the dragon. Archaeologists have speculated that the jade dragon might have been the totem of people living in this region and the very source of the dragon culture of the Chinese nation. Based on his studies of many years, renowned Chinese archaeologist Su Bingqi came to the conclusion that the dragon was the totem of the clan that was led by Huangdi. Archaeological finds related to the clan led by Huangdi all show that they lived during the same period of Hongshan culture. However, this conclusion is worlds apart from the assertion found in historical records, claiming that the clan of Huangdi originated along the Weishui River in Shanxi province.
更加重要的是呢，就目前考古发现的诸多文化类型中，红山文化在中国文明起源中曾是遥遥领先。特别是玉猪龙的出现，它不仅可以揭示出中国文明的起源，而且对于了解黄帝时代的历史和文化也是意义重大。
The tomb marked M75 contains only one human skeleton, lying on its back, with its head turning to the right. The jade carving of the pig dragon was placed next to the neck of the deceased. According to the stature of the body and the state of the teeth, Li Juan was able to conclude that the deceased had been a woman of about 40 years of age. After Li Juan had gathered enough initial information about the tomb, he contacted Xie Fei to report the discovery.
我当时听到这个消息呢，十分的高兴。这一发现觉得非同小可。这说明呢，在距今5000年前后，张家口地区是属于红山文化圈的。如果红山文化正像苏秉琦先生所说的，是黄帝部族创造的文化，那么这就为黄帝占燕地与黄帝占蚩尤呢，找到了具有说服力的依据，也就接近了历史的真实。
The Zhangjialiang burial site not only yielded the jade pig dragon, but also several dozen pottery objects that were also typical of Hongshan culture. The archaeologists had been scouring the Sanggan River Valley in Hebei province for many years in hope of finding evidence of prehistoric settlements there. The Zhangjialiang site was a major discovery, particularly as it dated from around the time when Huangdi is supposed to have lived. Thank you for staying with us on today's New Frontiers. I'm Ji Xiaojun from CCTV International. Bye for now.